Did you survive in week 9?
Of course I survived, Alan.
Okay.
What are you talking about?
Well, we didn't do we skipped a podcast on week 9. And by the way, surprisingly, and I guess I should say surprisingly, that I had at least 11, 12, 13 people say, hey, what time is the podcast going up on Friday? Because Thursday came and went. And I forget. I think that like sometimes I'm talking to you. Yeah, I posted on YouTube and, we get our 1,000 viewers, whatever it is. And then the podcast feed on yours, we get a few thousand more. But I forget there's people, when I was invested in listening to you, that I want to know if you skip a week, I get pissed.
Yeah, I went on vacation. Sasha had a school break in Portugal. It's weird. They have a shorter summer, but they have like breaks all the time during the year. And the kids' storage was not available for Sasha for that 10-day period. And so we went to northern central Spain, the Asturias, a place I had never heard of until a couple of months ago. It's great. I did a 14-mile hike, incredible mountains and gorges and rivers. It was really nice. But yeah, I wasn't really up for bringing my podcast equipment along.
Yeah, see, you've gone soft in your own age, and that's not code for anything.
No, it's not code for anything, and it's also not true. But the point is that no, we just we weren't there, and but I'm still alive, right? Like if I die, in real life, obviously, if I die, I won't do the thing anymore.
Yeah.
But even in Survivor, if I die, I think I'll stop. I'm not going to do. Oh, hypothetically, for RotoWire, I had to go through week 17, right? Because there's that random person who might need it, but my current boss just doesn't give a fuck. He says, do whatever you want, and if you're dead, don't worry about it.
We were kind of making the innuendo about being soft. Have you ever tried the medication that enhances, things like the Viagra's? No. Never even tried it?
Never tried it.
Yeah.
No. Apparently it's good for your heart. It's good. It actually has like positive side effects.
Well, that was the original intention of the medication. And it was like, all of a sudden these people were getting boners, and they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I did try it once, maybe about a decade or more ago. And I had blue streaks. Like it almost was like I was on an acid trip a little bit. So I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah, no, I never tried it, never really needed it. I always thought Palmero, whether he said he wasn't on steroids, then he was doing those Viagra commercials. I was like, this is probative. He's cheating in the bedroom. He's cheating. And he was in his 30s, when you're in your 30s, you shouldn't be doing it, unless you have some sort of medical problem. I mean, yeah, I guess if, I'm 52, so you might think, oh, this guy's too old. Well, maybe if I'm 75 or something, but
well, it has to do with circulation. So if you have exercise, you have good circulation, good diet, you probably won't have that problem.
Yeah, no.
All right. So who did you take in your most important
But thanks for asking. I didn't prepare for this segment.
Yeah. No problem. I was genuinely interested. I only see you from the waist up, so I wasn't sure.
Just proof of work. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So week 9 Survivor, in your most important pool, who did you take to get by?
The Saints. I took them in all 3 pools that are left. I used the Browns, so I didn't have a choice. I did say in my column, because realmansports.com, I still wrote the column, that I was going Saints because could be Deshaun Watson going for, it might not be Deshaun Watson going for the Browns, and it might be Kyler Murray going for the Cardinals. But I said if it's Clayton Tune, I might change over to the Browns. But then I realized I didn't have them anyway, so it didn't matter for me. Browns won easily. The Saints had a tiny bit of a sweat, but they were both rock solid picks.
In the NFFC, our high stakes redraft league, somebody had dropped Deshaun Watson during his he was being out. And I picked him up, and I had him last week. You were just talking about the Browns. That's why I thought about it.
Yeah.
I have too many leagues, man. I forgot to put him in. I ended up with Geno 5 points, Deshaun Watson 25 points. So 20 points would have won me my matchup and put me in first place in my league. Instead, I'm in second. Which is fine. Okay,
I would just commit suicide if I did that. I would just. I wouldn't even be doing this podcast.
I know. How do you say defenestrate?
I just defenestrate. I couldn't tolerate a mistake. We always talk about accountability in politics, and why isn't this person going to prison for what they're doing? And yet you have no accountability, Alan. You make a mistake like that.
It's going to cost me money.
No, but you're not punishing yourself in addition to that to ensure it never happens again.
Well, this is the prop. So I'm in probably 46 leagues when you count redraft and dynasty, and most of them are lineup setting. And every week there's like 1 or 2 big mistakes. I try not to make it the NFFC. This is the mistake, but I picked up Noah Brown, who went off for 20 points or whatever it was, and I actually picked him up, but forgot to put him in a lineup where I start 4 receivers, and I had Tyler Irwin in there. All those type of things. So
I would never do that many leagues. I mean, I make mistakes just in the few that I have, and I would just not be able to.
Yeah, no, you're right.
It would be.
It's horrible. So again, just very briefly, is what I'm doing is I'm trying to convert a lot of those lineup setting dynasty leagues to best ball dynasty.
Right.
Which, all right. So
I like best ball real life. Like you wake up when you're like 20 and you set yourself on autopilot and you don't ever have a single independent critical thought the rest of the way. And then, however it goes, it goes.
Right. And if you don't have enough tight ends or enough, financial, whatever, you just die. You just last place.
Just defend it straight. Yeah. It's no big deal.
Yeah. Hey, did you catch any of the, and I want to get into Survivor, but it's a yes or no. Did you catch any of the clips of the Republican debate list?
I caught a couple of clips of Vivek.
Yeah. He's good.
Vivisecting those nutless monkeys who were both in the media and then also on the stage with him.
Yeah.
And I thought it was pretty funny. I mean, he's not going to win, so he doesn't care. He just say anything he wants. You know?
Some people are calling this the vice presidential debate.
Yeah. Perhaps it is.
Well, if it's an audition, right? I mean, that's really what it is.
Yeah, perhaps it is. I mean, that guy's got his own like double dealing, sketchy past too. I don't really trust him, but he definitely says some base stuff, which I appreciate hearing.
Yeah, he's even calling out Lester Holt, saying you shouldn't be hosting the debate.
Oh, yeah. You guys had the whole Russiagate fraud and the laptop fraud. It's like, what are you guys even? And he said Joe Rogan and Elon Musk. I mean, of course they should be doing it, and he's right about that. But that guy's a little. That guy's not like I forget what he had done, like he pandemic profiteered or something like that. Also,
yeah. So, I mean, you have to be a little bit of a sicko to be running for high office, right? You can't be
probably.
All right, Survivor Week 10. Let's go over your article, which can be found on realmansports.com. Top 4 options and the percentage owned of each of those according to officepools.com.
Yeah, I didn't pull it up, but Dallas is like 47, 48% owned. And they are obviously a massive favorite at home against the Giants with Danny Devito playing quarterback for them. And then you got
DeVito.
Danny. May as well be. It may as well. He'd have an equal chance. I should do. In Twitter, I used to do polls when Tom Savage suffered a concussion. I did a poll that said, "Would you rather have a concussed Savage with a capital S or a concussed Savage with a lowercase s as your QB?"
Lowercase.
And of course, the lowercase won the poll. But, it's the same thing. Would you rather have Tommy DeVito or Danny DeVito as your QB? In present day, Danny DeVito has got to be like 70-something.
I'll tell you, I'd rather have Tommy DeVito, the character from Goodfellas. Because that was, remember, I mean, he was a crazy.
Who was that?
He was, Are You a Clown or do I amuse you?
Oh, Joe Pesci.
Yeah, his name was Tommy DeVito.
Yeah. He's about the same height as Danny DeVito, by the way.
Yeah.
But he's just a better actor.
And I was going to say, and his that character was based on a real life mafia hitman named Tommy DeSimone. That guy was, the real deal.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. So, but anyway, back to reality here. So the Cowboys are, prohibitive, huge favorite because they're like minus 900, whatever, or minus 1,000 when you average the money lines, and the other ones are like minus 350. So you're talking about a 91% chance per the market versus like a 78% chance. And so I asked the question. I said, well, Dallas is slam dunk. What percentage would have to be on Dallas to fade and switch to Buffalo, who's only 6% owned? And I did the math in the column, and it comes out to about 56, 57%. And so if you think that, 6 out of 10 people will be on Dallas, you could take Buffalo. Now, realistically, most people have used Dallas and Buffalo because those are common teams. So, so the next pivot is the Bengals. And then after that's the Seahawks. And I think I'm going to use the Seahawks. The Texans scare me a little bit. CJ Stroud, I think, is a real thing. And Texans defense isn't terrible. And then, and I just kind of like, I do like fading them after that dramatic win, but Texans scare me a little more than Seattle's playing somebody not very good. Who are they playing? They're playing Washington. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of like Seattle this week. Plus, everybody's used Seattle, and they've not used Dallas in my pool. So I'm going to basically be getting Seattle with 6 Dallas, and the pod eyes actually say that's good. Even though, the chance of the Giants beating Dallas is extremely slim. It says 9%, but I'd say it's more like 5 or 6%.
Yeah, it's the NFL. If you really thought that, I was going to use your own words against you and say, if you really thought that, why don't you put, mortgage your house and put everything? But you're saying 5%. You're not saying 0%. Like
right. Right. Well, the market says 9%, right? So, but if you're going to bet Dallas, you'd probably only get 7-8% because they would get the rake. But the true odds, not true odds, but the average of the two money lines, we take out the rake, is about 9% chance to lose for Dallas. It's 22-23 for Buffalo. It's a little higher for Seattle and Cincy. And if Dallas were, up to about 60% owned, then you could say, okay, that's enough pot odds for me to make the jump. If they're under 50%, then I would take Dallas, and I might take Dallas all the way up to 60 if I had them. I just don't have them.
Right. I mean, it's sometimes you just take the quote free square, right? I mean,
if it's 100 people and 99 were on Dallas, I would take anybody besides them. But it's not going to be that high just because people have used Dallas.
So, okay. All right. That's that. So as of right now, who are you taking if you don't have Dallas?
Probably Seattle, but I'll make that final decision.
And let's say you don't have Seattle. One more.
Well, then I'd probably take Cincy or Buffalo. One of those two. Probably Buffalo, Cincy. I just don't trust the Bills. They're a bit sketchy. They almost lost to the Giants themselves at home.
Yeah. I was looking at some NFL futures. I think this is the time. You're talking about not trusting the Bills. Josh Allen MVP is up to 22 or 25 to 1 at this point. So I do like that a little bit.
On that shit, my bookie, it's 18 to 1. I just looked at it. I mean,
well, there you go.
That's play. By the way, I don't know if I told you this, but I won $440 from them because I'm in that fake super contest. And I guess I went 15-4-1 over the last 4 weeks, and there's a week 5 to 8 quarterly prize, and I double up my entry, so I won two $220 prizes, and then I went 4-1 again last week, and I would have been 5-0 if that nutless monkey kicker on the Saints had just made that field goal. I would have been 5-0.
So I've heard a lot of super contest players, Nick Whalen, who's in the super contest for RotoWire. He said the same thing. He said the Saints kicker, so I guess that really
field goal. Also, it was 3rd and 2. They had like a minute and a half left. It was 3rd and 2. Bears were out of timeouts, and if they get stuffed on that 3rd and 2, they get another field goal attempt to go up 10. They made the first down, and it was over. But whatever. There's been worse beats than that.
All right. Any final thoughts on Survivor before we move over to Week 10 fantasy?
Not really.
Any strategy, look ahead, anything like that?
No, look ahead. And here's the thought that I had is I didn't realize everyone had Dallas left initially when I wrote this, but it still applies. Is that week that I took the Browns, right? I took the Browns when everyone had the Seahawks. The Seahawks were the obvious play. I took the Browns. Remember that week was the Bills. We lost on the Bills that week. Everyone else, we faded the Seahawks. They were like really highly owned. They won easily, the Seahawks. I had the Browns. I lost 5 years off my life in that Browns-Colts game. But because I made it through without using Seattle, now everybody used Seattle that week except me. So now, even though they're going to all be on Dallas, I'm the only one in Seattle this week. And it just shows not only when you do a pot odds play, do you get the possibility of winning your pool or depleting your pool greatly that week, but you get out of phase with the rest of your pool, which is so valuable. Right. Every week, they've got these teams available, but I've got these. And so they're all in the, iceberg that's going to drop. I'm getting once you get the pot odds once, it tends to, reverberate later in the, even if regardless of what the real odds are, you're always going to have teams available, but they don't, and they're going to have teams that you don't. And what's funny is even if you think, okay, 7-person pool, they all have Dallas left. They're all going to use Dallas. They know that I've used Dallas. So they know I'm going to be on another team. So now the game theory is they can't really get off of Dallas because the payout's not good enough. It's only good enough if everybody else is on Dallas. So it's almost like it's a game of chicken and we're going toward each other. And, the game of chicken is you want the other person to swerve. They lose. If you swerve, you lose. And obviously if you both swerve, you both don't win. And if you both crash, you die. Well, the way to win a game of chicken is you take the steering wheel, you rip it out, you show them, look, I can't swerve, right? So you either die and kill me or you lose, and you're going to always swerve. Well, that's me. I can't take Dallas. So I'm fading Dallas. I can't swerve. But you all have Dallas. And now if you try to be the one who fades, there's going to be someone else fading too. And the payout's not worth it. Right. So now I own the sole fade. And so, I can't emphasize it enough. As soon as you're out of phase with the rest of your pool, you have an advantage.
Yeah, no. So that is where I think it's an interesting point because if you adopt this pot odds strategy, where I've made the mistake is I've gotten away with it once, so I'm out of phase with my pool, and then I do it again unnecessarily. So I think that's a new part of your survivor strategy, which you haven't really emphasized over the years. All the years you're doing this is you only need to get out of phase once, and then you don't want to get out of phase again because you're taking unnecessary risk.
Well, yeah, get out of phase as many times as you want, as long as the payout is commensurate with the risk. But if it's not, you don't need to go further. You're already out of phase. That fading of Seattle, and meaning I didn't have Cleveland last week, so I took the Saints, right? So that's a little bit different. And then this week I've got Seattle and they don't. So unfortunately they all have Dallas. So that's, that's a better pick. But but at least it'll be me against all 6 of them. So it's basically a fair fight because they've got a way better chance to win. But if I win and they lose, it's over. So that's the advantage.
All right. You're here with Chris Liss of realmansports.com. You can find all of his fantasy content over at realmansports.com. Also, the Chris Liss podcast. Highly recommend you subscribe to that. It is all things social consciousness, politics, just his thoughts. Definitely appointment viewing Chris Liss, the Chris Liss podcast. Search for that on Spotify or Apple because it doesn't come in on any other of my damn feeds. I don't know when you can fix that.
Yeah, I switched it over, from Real Man Wood to Chris Liss podcast, and I switched it over on those too. But
and you broke it.
Tell me which one you need me to do, and I'll go and fix it.
The one I use is called Podcast Republic. But listen, I'm not going to drive you crazy.
No, I'll do it. It's easy.
I just listen to it on Spotify. It's okay. Fine. It's fine.
Right.
Do you have Spotify Premium? Do you pay for them?
I do, only because I got Sasha an MP3 player, and it only worked if you
it's good.
got Spotify and give her stuff. But now I regret it because she listens to all this garbage music, and first of all, it's in my thing now, so it's associated with me, which is just embarrassing personally.
Well, there's a family plan. You can do the family plan, so it's separate. I
don't want to pay extra. She can pollute it, but I also just don't like that music getting into her head. All this stuff that's inappropriate for a kid and all this
that's why
it's also like the music is so pathetic now. It's all about
Oh, you sound like old man. You sound like my music's better than yours. That's
no. It's not only better, right? I mean, Robert Plant. Let's be honest, Robert Plant. Every song by Led Zeppelin is about him getting cucked. Every song is about, some guy, open my front door, hear my back door slam, like this. Every single thing is his woman cheating on him and not being satisfied with him. So, okay, fair enough. But these songs, it's so pathetic. Like they're just like pathetic whines for the person you're into to be into you, that you're being rejected. Like that's every song. And it's like, that is not the right, I don't care about messaging. I'm not like, I'm not going to tell her to go listen to like Christian rock or something. But what I'm saying is like, just have a song with some balls. Like this music is like the most pathetic music of losers that she listens to. And whatever, I'm trying to, be a good parent. I'm not trying to like go to war. I mean, I can't stop her from listening to it, but I try to encourage her to listen to some, some real music.
Yeah. Like I said, I kind of alluded to it, but when you start saying my music is better than yours, that's a line of like, get off my lawn a little bit. Now, I'm not saying that the pop music is not bubblegummy sort of, but wasn't pop music like when, in the 90s, the NSYNC stuff? I mean, that didn't really have any balls either, but I love it.
Oh, I don't love it at all. That's horrible.
I appreciate it.
I don't appreciate it at all. I don't appreciate any of that shit. So I'm old school. Get off my lawn. Even when I was young, it was get off my lawn. I mean, Led Zeppelin was pop music in the 70s, right? But I mean, it was good, and some of the 80s stuff held up too. But like
I love 80s rock.
But that once it started getting into those like corporate bands, like the New Kids on the Block and sing like these things that were like put together by like producers, they were like, let's find like a boy band that's gonna like be a hit. I'm sure that was going on since the beginning of time, but point is just that I think a lot of the pop music is just total shit. And it is, and there are objective truths, like, it's like, do you want to make a bet that in like 3 centuries, like Beethoven is going to get more listens than Britney Spears? Yes. Right. And why? Well, it's just a matter of taste. Maybe you like Britney Spears better than Beethoven, or maybe you don't like classical music, or maybe, you don't like Radiohead or the Rolling Stones or the Beatles. Maybe you just like Britney Spears. It's just a matter of personal taste. Do you want to bet in 300 years, like which music's going to be listened to and which one's going to go into the dustbin of history? I'll take that bet. And why? Why would you not make that bet? Because there are just some like truths about art. It's not like you can point to it and say, this is why exactly, but you just know that some stuff is good and some stuff is garbage.
Yeah. The way I'll just put a cap on that is, of course, like you can transfer the same thing over to cinema. Of course, Godfather is going to be viewed in 100 years as the classic movie, but
just because you liked Hot Dog better than Godfather, Alan, doesn't mean, remember Hot Dog? Hot Dog was a good movie.
I saw Hamburger, the movie, which is amazing, by the way.
Hot Dog was that ski movie. Was that ski?
Yeah.
Like those, like,
so there you go. Yeah. Ski Patrol, horrible movie, but like fun to watch. And, anyway, so I try to stay, when I was teaching in a middle school over the last 5 years, or I guess it's longer now, but I try to stay open to the new music because I want to know. I don't want to become like Led Zeppelin back in my day. I don't want to do that.
Well, I don't even listen to Zeppelin really anymore because I play them to death, so I don't really, I'll listen if it comes on the radio, but I'm just saying that was pop music in the 70s, and it's
fair enough.
It holds up better than the garbage in the 90s, I think.
people tuned in for some fantasy football. I'm ready to talk fantasy football with you. I think Bijan Robinson is where I want to start this conversation here. It seems that it's Arthur Smith, the coach of the Atlanta Falcons, versus the fantasy community, right? It's kind of becoming this contentious relationship but at first I'm like, come on, just the guy's winning, leave him alone. He's not, he never used Drake London. He never used Kyle Pitts the right way. Jonnu Smith is getting all the stats I thought Kyle Pitts was going to get, but now it's spilled over into Bijan Robinson. They took a running back in the first round. What do you see for the rest of the season? And untangle the whole Bijan Arthur Smith thing.
It's like it's all fun and games until someone loses an eye, right? And now the eye that's being lost is Bijan Robinson owners, being like, I drafted this guy in the first round, including me. I'm of two minds on this. Like on one hand, I'm like, Arthur Smith is a professional coach, and he actually was quite successful as an offensive coordinator in Tennessee. I had this sort of a joking back and forth with Scott Barrett on Twitter where, he was saying, like he got Ryan Tannehill to be like, after he was like the worst QB in the league, to be like 9.6 YPA, and
he resuscitated him. Yep.
And he was 32-17 as offensive coordinator of the Titans, and they're 10-15 since, and he Derrick Henry was a timeshare with Deion Lewis, and then Arthur Smith comes in. We're joking because obviously Derrick Henry would have been great whenever he got his opportunity, but the point is it's not as simple as like this guy's an idiot, he doesn't know what he's doing, but he is definitely, it seems, outthinking himself. You drafted this guy in the first round. You see the talent when he plays. It's not just his college tape. I mean, you see it in the pros. He makes a move. You're like, wow, that guy's amazing. And he's not using him nearly enough. And it's beyond the point of, we need to preserve him for the second half. The Falcons are in contention, but they blew a game, that they might have won. And they've got to mix him in, and so I think this week he probably will. I heard his like long rant about all the different situations and stuff. And it wasn't like, I was like, all right, yeah, he's very aware of each thing and what he's doing. And maybe he's using the decoy a little too much. I mean, it's fine to use a good player as a decoy now and then and misdirect the defense who thinks Bijan's going to get it. But at some point, you got to give it to your best player, most athletic and talented player. And hopefully he does that. So I think going forward, he'll be good again. I don't think it didn't sound for me like Arthur Smith was digging in his heels. He was pretty contrite and just like, but I think the real takeaway of this is the fantasy community isn't just like a bunch of nerds. I mean, they are a bunch of nerds, but they're not just a bunch of nerds who nobody cares about.
They're the lifeblood of football.
Right. Bettors and fantasy players are actually the constituents that you represent, yes, like it or not, as a coach, right? Like it used to just be you were sort of the representative of the fans, and if you lose, you get fired. But I could see at some point, given the direction things are going, that if you screwed up the fantasy angle too much, you could get fired in a way. Not if you were winning Super Bowls, but if you were just like in contention, because the public would sour on you. The people who pay for the product would sour on you. The people, who do you think's buying the Sunday ticket or whatever they call it now, the Game Pass? It's the fantasy people and the betting people. So, like it or not, that's your constituency now, and you can't ignore them. And I think he got a piece of that. I mean, they lost, which if they had won, he could have,
right,
said, well, but 5-4 wouldn't have even been good enough. I mean, at a certain point, it's like, look, you play the fantasy guys, and it's going to be a little bit of a conflict, I think, for coaches, especially ones who are not Bill Belichick or somebody who's so established that, that they're sort of like get away with it.
But even Bill Belichick is getting pushed back on now. There was firing talk. There's all this different stuff. But,
didn't he just get a contract extension like a couple weeks ago?
Got a contract extension, but that doesn't preclude him from being let go. That was what the Mike Reese.
But does it keep the money though? If he's let go, what's the point of a contract if they can let you go and not pay you?
Right. Well, yeah, no. You obviously, I don't know what the guarantees are. They don't post coaches' contracts.
Like if I'm signing a contract, right, I'm obligating myself to the team. I can't go coach another team. So if I can be fired without being paid, and yet I'm obligated to the team, that's not a contract, right?
Right. No, I don't think that's what it is. But also, that contract extension for Bill Belichick came in a week where people were saying, would he get mid-season fired? And as we've seen already, like look at the Raiders. Mark Davis has $88 million in unpaid and unworking coaches right now, right, between Gruden and Josh McDaniels. Right? He does not give an F at all. I mean, and you would assume that Robert Kraft, like I said, it's not going to preclude him for doing what he thinks.
Yeah, he could definitely afford food, a massage, whatever he needs still, right? So I mean, he's fine. He can afford any kind of massage he wants, even massages that you're not supposed to get. Here's the thing. He should sign Deshaun Watson. I mean, that's just like a perfect match.
Oh,
right?
There you go.
Watson and Kraft. They could have like a heart-to-heart about the whole situation. So no, it's not really fair because apparently Kraft was consensual or at least like with permission.
Right.
But,
there's a little more.
But Watson's just an allegation. He's not been prosecuted, right? He didn't come out. I think it was just
right.
settled.
But neither OJ wasn't prosecuted either.
No, he was prosecuted.
Well,
he was just acquitted. He was acquitted.
Right. Good point.
Right.
Good point.
Well, the thing about OJ is right. He's acquitted. Now, most people think OJ killed his wife and her friend, right? Most people believe that. Now, I think it's very likely that that's the case. But if some guy came out of the woodwork tomorrow and had an account of the situation that explained everything better, with a better thing of him doing it, then I would change my mind. But as of now, my working hypothesis is that OJ did it.
Yeah, brilliant. The only thing you're bringing up feelings of nostalgia for me there. Do you remember watching the Knick game and it was interrupted, the finals?
Do I remember? I've had like 50. Are you just trying to push my buttons?
No,
dude, I almost defenestrated.
Let me just explain for those who don't know. The Knicks, New York Knicks, who hadn't been to the NBA Finals since the 70s, were in the mid 90s against Houston Rockets, doing well, and then all of a sudden the broadcast gets interrupted for the OJ car chase. So go ahead.
So the producer at NBC, whoever made that call, should have been executed because this was on every channel. This OJ chase, right? Like they should have put a scroll that said, "There's an OJ Simpson breaking news story. It's on every other channel. If you love basketball, stay right here." But they did it too. So here I am watching my team that I watched every game, and I lived in New York then. I watched every game for like 5 years. I was like the Mason, Oakley, Starks, that brutalized team. The Jordan was bullying them. Finally, Ewing. Finally, Jordan goes into gambling exile for a couple of years or whatever you want to call it, and the Knicks are in the finals, and it's a really competitive series, and they just mid-game. I mean, that is such malpractice. I mean, I've said it a million times on the radio before, but it's like the idea that you would just be like, "Oh, we need to do what everyone else is doing," instead of just informing the viewers. It was such a betrayal of the viewer. It was like, "We don't care about you. We just want to." Why would you even consider doing that with somebody who knew nothing about programming, nothing about TV, nothing about humanity? I mean, that was like, it was.
Dick Ebersol was the guy who was head of NBC Sports.
Did he make the call? Was he the guy who made the call?
He ultimately had to. If you watch all the documentaries, I believe that you had to. It went all the way.
Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
Here's what, again, executive. I used to be in advertising as a low-level salesperson, but what you should have done there is split the screen.
No, just scroll on the bottom.
Split the screen.
But why? Then you can't see either. You're going to change the channel.
Come on, look, we watch NFL Sunday Ticket on 6
boxes. Your TV, remember the size of your TV back then in 1993, Alan?
Good point. But I'm saying at very minimum, split screen or do picture-in-picture where you do.
Who cares? If that was your interest because you weren't an actual basketball fan, just change the channel.
I know, but they don't want you changing the channel because remember.
But why? For what? You're the only one. The only reason they're watching, but they don't care. Nobody cares about NBC or CBS or ABC. Nobody cares about those places. They just want the programming. So if the NBA Finals is only on NBC, then I'm going to watch NBC, right? And if if all of a sudden, someone else wants to watch the OJ chase and we have to switch, it's not going to make me not switch back to NBC the next day to watch the basketball finals. I mean, it's like the most short-sighted decision ever. And I mean, I don't know. I should have never watched NBC again after that, but I did.
A couple more fantasy football topics that I want to discuss with you. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. Couple down weeks in fantasy football. They're off this week. Obviously, the easy answer is that Matthew Stafford wasn't there. But even when Matthew Stafford was there was a couple weeks. Do you see this as, I know it's kind of cheap fantasy advice, buy low, sell high, but with trade deadlines coming up, nobody wants Cooper Kupp right now. There actually is a trade to be made here. Do you see this as the beginning of the end, or is Kupp still an elite player? And just listen, he was bound to have a few games.
Well, he had 2 bad games before Stafford got hurt.
And by the way, P break for me. Talk about this.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Well, he had a couple bad games before Stafford got hurt, and then Stafford got hurt. And I'm not confident that Stafford's necessarily going to be 100% after the bye. They said he might have played last week, but that seemed dubious in retrospect. So I don't know how serious the thumb injury is, but I would probably deal him for, like Hopkins or someone like that if I could get it. But if you're sort of need a lot of upside, need kind of a miracle, then you're on the other side of that, right? It's sort of the top 5 upside player. If he, right when he came back from the injury, he was himself right away. So I'm basically saying, like, I would trade him for Hopkins if I have Cup, if my team's like solid. But if my team was desperate, and I just need like a top 5 upside guy, say I'm like,
Terry McLaurin.
If I'm desperate, I definitely trade McLaurin for Cup. Just for the upside.
Oh, I would say the other way around. Would you trade?
If I'm solid, if I'm like 7-3 or whatever it is, 7-2, right? Then I'm like, yeah, let's just bank this. I'd rather have Hopkins actually, but
right. I'm giving you one level down from there.
Yeah.
So you brought up DeAndre Hopkins. I haven't talked to you since Will Levis took over. What are your observations telling you about the rookie who fell in the draft to the second round? He looks the part to me.
I didn't see a lot of his play. I just saw him throw a bunch of like really high lollipop bombs, and then Hopkins ran under them, and that's better than
also. There was
but I just was like, that's better than not trying it. I sometimes think you'll see like a QB just chuck one deep, and there'll be a PI and it'll be a 50-yard play, and you're like,
do that.
Like the whole last 2 games, the other QB was like dink and dunking and like would never get, take sacks, like never just chuck it. And you're like, dude, just throw the ball up and let your playmakers make plays. Try to look off the safety so it's one-on-one, so he's not just getting picked. But like, and if you get picked on a 50-yard bomb, it's not a big deal unless he runs it all the way back. So, so it just seems like he's willing to sling it, and that's half the battle.
You would stay with him, right? If you're Mike Vrabel at this point.
There's nothing to lose.
Well, if sometimes if he has 3 interceptions in a game, like you start getting
if he had more than 11 interceptions in a game, I would bench him. But
perfect.
Below that, I would. It's just like, what do you care? Like you're in development mode. You're not going anywhere this year. And why draft the Q? I mean, you have, these rookie contracts are a big deal, right? You need to know, information is valuable. In poker, sometimes people make a bet. They'll pay money just to see what the other guy does. They'll pay for information, right? And so I think you got to pay for information. You got to be willing to risk. I'm not even sure it is a risk because Tannehill's not very good anymore. But, you got to be willing to risk to get information about your quarterback who's under his rookie contract. I think that's beyond a no-brainer. Yeah,
I want to stick with quarterbacks here. I have a list of questions, but you watch a lot of football over the last. You talk about it in your articles a lot. You've been watching for 40 plus years. NFL football. So I trust
45 plus years, Alan.
45 plus years. So
I was betting on football when I was 6.
What were you betting? Like cookies or like
a dime? My not a dime, like 1,000.
That's what I'm saying. You were using slang back then too?
No, literally a dime. With my grandfather who got me into sports betting. Yeah.
Oh, so he's responsible for your
Yes, I wrote a whole article on it, Alan. I thought you read my articles. It was a whole. It was in the RotoWire magazine a couple of years ago.
I'm doing the interview thing. I know about you, but I'm doing it as if I'm inviting the audience.
Sorry to get.
Don't break character. Yeah. Don't break character. CJ Stroud. We were talking about like dynasty rankings, right? So I want you to get into that mindset for a second before we talk about what you've seen. I mean, if you were playing in like a keeper league and you're starting and we're drafting the quarterbacks only, like a super flex league, how many quarterbacks would have to go off the board before you took CJ Stroud?
Well, Mahomes, Burrow, 1-2 probably.
Josh Allen still, I think, for fantasy football is
I guess, but he hasn't really been hurt. He's been pretty tough. So like
that's what I'm saying.
He's not like one of those guys who's breaking down.
And he's having a great season, by the way. Again,
and Hurts got the contract, and he gets that
so 3
QB sneak. That's 4, right?
No, it's 3.
Burrow, Mahomes, Allen, Hurts.
Oh, you said Burrow too. Okay, this is controversial. So you're 100% in on Burrow.
I mean, CJ Stroud had an incredible game, and he's been very good as a rookie. But is he going to be better than? Is he going to be? Yeah. First of all, he doesn't have Chase and Higgins, but Higgins may be gone next year.
Right.
But what percent chance is he has a better career than Burrow? Like he's better than Burrow?
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. You're
hoping 20, 25.
You're hoping.
Joe Burrow is pretty good, right? So the problem with Burrow is he gets hurt a lot. That's the negative with him. But Burrow's what 27. He's pretty old for a young for a guy who's only been in the league a couple of years, but 28. But quarterbacks play till 35, so you don't really care if he's 28 or 24 that much, right? It's just more like you got another 7 years. 7 years can be a nuclear war, right? We don't care about 8 years down the road. Like, Stroud will be there in 10 years, and Burrow will be, 30, 38 or whatever. Who cares?
Right, so back to this exercise. Yeah. So you have the big three plus Burrow. Let's call them big four. All right, here now we go. Herbert or in fantasy football, Herbert or CJ Stroud. You're having a dynasty league or a keeper league.
Stroud.
Okay, so there it is. So he doesn't. If you're picking,
Herbert, he's handicapped by that nutless monkey analytics guy coach.
Yeah, but he may not be there forever though.
Yeah, no, he won't be. He'll probably get fired after this year. But Herbert, he looks like Dan Marino to me. Slings the ball so nicely. Keenan Allen's good, but Mike Williams is always hurt. And Quentin Johnston. I mean, I don't know if he's ever going to be anything. Keenan Allen's getting old. Eckler's getting old. I mean, they may have to kind of start from scratch on that whole wide receiver thing. And how good is Herbert? I mean, you'd think like even with a crap coach, he would have. It's a tough conference though. There's so many good quarterbacks in the AFC. It's like ridiculous. But I think probably I would take Stroud. That game was just like, that was the Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes thing where it's like there's not enough time on the clock, and yet the ball zips right to the guy right on the sideline, right to the guy right in the end zone. Like, there's the rush coming. He obviously processes fast, right? That's the problem with Danny Dimes, and even worse with Zach Wilson, is that like Danny Dimes, the guy's athletic. He works his tail off. He's got a good arm. He can make every throw. But I just think his brain, like how fast can you look at images and make a decision? It's almost like a muscle reflex. It's almost like like physical quickness, right? It's like mental processing power. And it just seems like Stroud has it. And like Zach Wilson's the worst. Like Zach Wilson has a good arm. He's very mobile. He just cannot process like what's going on. And it's just like it's probably a DNA thing, that you just have. And Stroud, that's what he has. He has that, like, I see everything and I'm going to make the decision and the ball's going to get there on time and on target. And I don't know, man. I feel like it could be some kind of mirage, but I feel like the sample's large enough that I'm sold.
So two things there. One, the irony is the S2 test, which replaced that. What was the other test they used to get, the cognitive
Wonderlic?
test?
The Wonderlic?
Yeah, that's gone. S2 is in. S2 said Stroud was a bad processor, so they're fired, right?
Right.
The S2 results said Bryce Young is going to, the Panthers pointed to the S2 test this year to take Bryce Young over.
They better be lobbying for and paying for more S2 because their whole regime is done. I mean, they should be on suicide watch. If you pass up the guy at pick 1 and he goes pick 2, that's it for you. You are not, it was bad enough for the GM, Ryan Pace, was it, that took Trubisky and when Mahomes and Watson were in the draft, right, at 2. But at least Mahomes and Watson went 10, 11. Like, at least you could say, well, a lot of people passed on him. I mean, everybody should commit suicide who didn't take Patrick Mahomes. But okay, a lot of people did. You at least could, like, there's safety in numbers. But like, dude, nobody else passed on him. You did this, and you're going to hang your hat on this stupid metric. And I wrote about this. Like, you need to use your judgment. You can't be like, oh, the metric says this, and then all of a sudden, like, I'm off the hook or I'm going to make a good choice. What a blunder. I mean, what a colossal. I mean, this is a decade. This is taking your franchise for a decade and dunking it underwater. I mean, you had the ticket. You were the number 1 pick. You had it. And you just completely squandered it. And
wait
I don't see how you get a job
here. Yeah. Not only did they just have that choice, they paid extra to make that choice. They traded away their first-round pick next year to make that choice. So now, because if the Panthers had done this and taken Stroud, they'd be like, all right, fine. But now they're going to have the number 1, 2, or 3 pick, and it's not even theirs. They can't even reinforce it. So Chicago has their pick.
Just brutal. I mean, absolutely brutal. And, look, drafting is hard. I don't want to say, like, if I were a GM, I would always get it right. But results are results, I mean, all those, like, process bros, they don't know shit. Oh, my process. Oh, but he used the test. They did it. Nobody gives a fuck. Like this is a result. Like, one franchise is on the rise and is going to be a contender for years if he stays healthy. And the other franchise looks like, is this guy like a backup or something? Like is he like Taylor Heineke? Like, who's he going to be? Now he's only a rookie, and maybe Bryce Young can be okay, but and we're still dealing with a somewhat small sample. But man, you've got to be like very nervous if you're the Carolina front office.
You're past that. You're already like, man, we have to show something. You forget, like, hey, he's going to be better than him. Bryce Young going to be better than CJ Stroud. At this point, you're like, let's just make it so he's a. You
Baker Mayfield, just get Baker Mayfield out of him or something. But Baker Mayfield was good as a rookie. I mean, he actually showed something.
Right.
So this is Baker Mayfield. It seems like the ceiling for Bryce Young.
Yeah. The other thing that you often say that I want to underline here is that it's not just the size of the sample. Sometimes it's the magnitude of it. And then, and meaning that CJ Stroud came in, had 2 game-winning drives and 450 yards. and he doesn't have, like we just pointed out, doesn't have Chase, doesn't have T. Higgins. He has Nico Collins, who we kind of like, right? I like, and Tank Dell has been impressive as a 160-pound receiver, but he's doing it with these guys. He seems like he's an elevator, right? He brings the other guys up.
Yeah. I mean, he's not that mobile, right? But he's just one of those guys that sees the field, I mean, Tom Brady wasn't mobile. Peyton Manning wasn't mobile. So, again, that's not what we're looking at yet. We can't be going there quite yet, but I mean, the best rookie I've ever seen is a quarterback, right? I mean, Peyton Manning was bad as a rookie, and Brady didn't even play really. So, have you seen a rookie quarterback that's better than this?
RG3.
Yeah, but that was a lot of that. That read option was like a huge part of that. It was the running. Yeah, but as a passer, as a pocket, I mean, RG3 had 20 touchdowns and like 4 picks. He was pretty good.
It was just, I just had never seen anything like RG3 before at the time, but now I would say what Stroud's doing is more impressive because it's more sustainable. Like when RG3, like there's no way, like, it was no shocker when he left the NFL early because he got hurt and re-injured and all that other stuff. So interesting point. I mean, imagine, like we're not even in that close to that mindset yet, but imagine CJ Stroud ends up being an all-timer. It's possible, right? I mean, it's in play. It's
not just in play. It's like almost the base case. I mean, nobody does this when you start your career. Now you get hurt and,
sure,
whatever.
But good. Yeah. So, all right. Interesting. All right. In on CJ Stroud. I like that. And I passed on him in a dynasty league for Bryce Young. The guy was victory
lapping. Me for Zay Flowers. I took Zay Flowers.
Yeah, but you took it, that you weren't considering.
No, I had Patrick Mahomes as anyway.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. I'm just giving you because Zay Flowers is such a bust. It's so pathetic. I can't believe I took Zay Flowers.
He's still doing better than Devin A-Chain.
No, he's not. No, he's not.
I don't think Zay Flowers is a bust. He's still their number one receiver. It's just that they've had a lot of success.
He's like a little quick guy. He's like Kadarius Toney with better health.
Okay. I'm going to respectfully disagree because they haven't gotten the offense going yet. I mean, it's only week 10. I mean, what the hell are they waiting for? But he's still the number one receiver on that team. And
but that's split around by like 10 guys, and Andrews is really the number one.
Yep. This is this is not relevant what I'm about to ask you here for anyone in like a normal league, but I saw that they brought back the Dallas Cowboys, Martavis Bryant, 31 years old. I used to love that guy, man.
Love that dude.
Just never really put it together. I mean, do you have any, do you think he could be fantasy relevant at all? Like, should you pick him up? Because he's on waiver wires, even like if you're like in a 3 receiver, NFFC, are you picking him up?
No, I didn't pick him up. I mean, I loved him too. He was like 6'4" and fast and he looked like Randy Moss, out there. But he's like 31 and Dallas can't even get the ball to like Michael Gallup or Brandon Cooks,
Well, it's been your guy, Tolbert now, who's been getting
Tolbert. Yeah, but I've already dropped him in all his leagues. It's really just CeeDee Lamb and tight end.
And Ferguson, yeah.
Yeah, and who's nobody talks about this. Maybe they are, and I'm not really following them, but Tony Pollard, I've made a lot of terrible picks, Darren Waller.
It's being talked about now this week.
But Tony Pollard, it's like, dude, he's healthy all year and he's doing nothing. Like, he doesn't score touchdowns. He's caught a few passes, but not going anywhere with them. He's got like 4 yards of carry on modest. I mean, it's like, what's the point of Tony Pollard?
This is exactly what the critics of Tony Pollard were pointing to. Hey, give this guy the lead role, and it's not going to go well. He's best as a change of pace when the defense is tired, when they've been beat up by Zeke. You've talked about this in a lot of different podcasts, radio shows, and now you put it's almost like when Corey Davis, you remember that guy that was on Tennessee and then went to the Jets,
number one, the Jets.
Went from being AJ Brown's number 2 to the Jets number 1, flames out of the league. So he is Corey Davis in a sense.
Yeah, there was a guy, Kevon, or maybe it was just Kevin Barlow on the Niners. And we had him on the magazine and an insert, 49er gold, right? Like one of those like things. And he was same thing. He was like really good as a backup the year before. Then I think it was like Garrison Hirsch or somebody left. And Barlow or Frank Gore, I can't remember, was the clear starter. And we were like, okay, look how good he is. Now project it with more volume. And it just doesn't work like that.
Right. Exactly. It's sometimes those guys are better suited for those roles. That's why I'm on Dallas, like for fantasy football. I'm picking up Rico Dowdle where I can, because he strikes me as a player that I don't know why they're not giving him more work. I guess because they've gone to a more of a pass heavy approach here. So that's somebody that I'm interested in. Some of the other players that are in the news this week that I think are George Pickens, right? I don't know if you've been following along here, but he's doing that move where he takes the team off Instagram, unfollows Mike Tomlin because he hasn't been getting targeted. Great player, but it's always been someone that, it's all going to come together for fantasy. I mean, Deontay Johnson's a player that nobody wanted on Pittsburgh, but on all my teams, I have him this year. Pittsburgh passing game. Pittsburgh's doing well right now. What do you make of it?
I mean, Kenny Pickett is just so uninspiring.
That's what it is.
There's not enough to go around for everybody, right? And what's the name? Pat Freiermuth. I was going to say Heath Miller, but Pat Freiermuth is coming back in week 11, and he's a decent receiver. And so you're just going to have like Freiermuth, Deontay, Pickens,
the running backs.
Yeah, Jalen Warren. It's just, they even throw to Najee's carcass, and it's like there's just not enough to go around for everybody. It's not that kind of an offense, and the defense is pretty good. They ugly it up. So, and then the weather's going to get bad in the NFC North. So I don't know. He'll have his games. He's a dynamic guy. He can make catches over top of people and get down the field. But how much of that can you count on? I don't know.
All right. I wanted to save this question for near the end here, but I want to go back to your Giants for a minute. I know you wrote an article about the state of the Giants, and you basically have waved the white flag. You're giving up, and now you're rooting for losing because you want them to get a higher pick.
I'm not rooting for losing.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying. You're not disappointed when you lose. You see the upside.
I don't care anymore. Yeah.
Right. So what do you, if they are in the pole position to get one of the quarterbacks, it doesn't have to be the 1.1. Let's say they're, they can get, there's a guy.
I want them to get 12-inch. 12-inch would be awesome. Right? Don't you? Is that his nickname? Because if it's not his nickname, it needs to be his nickname. Michael Penix, 12-inch. They should call him 12-inch. Why would they? Yeah.
That's too good.
Oh, it's Penix. I thought it was Penix. Michael Penix, 12-inch.
So, well, there's
But if they get 12-inch, that's really great, right? I mean, that would be,
Yeah. Well, it's hard to get him.
Yeah, well, they'll get a lot of penetration near the goal line. So,
so you want So they're obligated to Dimes contractually for one more year at like $40 million. Who cares though, right? If you get a guy, he's have an expensive backup, and you have
get 12-inch, you got to take it.
You're out on Danny Dimes. You're out.
No, I'm out. I mean, he's hurt, right? And he was really good last year. I mean, did a great job in a terrible situation, but a lot of it was that read option stuff, because there was no receivers, and they used his athleticism, but it was like a poor man's rookie RG3. It was like everything he did was right, and he didn't throw a lot of picks or turn it over last year for once. But it's like when you see him, I just think the processing is just a little bit slow, and that was the knock on him before that. And this year kind of reared its ugly head again. Now he's hurt. I think he would be a good backup somewhere. Like I would love if I were a team to have him as a backup. I think he could and maybe even have a couple of good years, like a Tannehill or someone like that. Yeah, I think Tannehill's probably a good comp for him actually overall.
I think I want him to get a chance over on the Atlanta Falcons. I thought that would be a good setup for him.
I mean, yeah, that would be great. I think he's okay. It's just if you're going to get one of those top picks, and there are quarterbacks there, I don't mean Sam Darnold, for the stat nerds, like, oh, you got to take Sam Darnold. He's the best quarterback. Not those guys. But if there's quarterbacks, I don't know shit about college football, but what I'm told is there are a couple of really good quarterbacks coming up.
There's two elite prospects in Caleb Williams from UFC. You've heard of him. He's the one that everyone's talking, right? And then the other one is this guy, Drake May, who is now getting buzzes. He could be the number 1 overall pick. So yeah, there's two guys that are slated to go at the top that are really showing.
12 inches in that class. This is something Ted Bell tweeted.
So he is he's now getting first round buzz. So that means that he's probably going to shoot up the board. That means that 12 inches is going to shoot his up the board. But yeah, when it's all said and done, the guy's going to be in the top 10.
Top 10. Okay.
That's how it works.
Point is, if there's a guy, and again, I don't know anything about college, that checks the boxes, not as like 5'5" or whatever Bryce Young is, a guy who has
these guys are real prospects, the real prospect,
big time prospect. Then I would take him and figure out trade Danny Dimes. I don't know how you trade Danny Dimes with that deal, without you maybe take some of the hit. I don't know how they do it with like partial cap hit or something.
You don't have to trade up. Just have an what's the difference if you have a rookie that's backing up Dimes or hit Dimes? You have the money anyway. You're obligated for one more year.
Right. You're paying it regardless, so you may as well. Yeah,
might as well have him.
Yeah, right. The only problem is if Dimes comes back healthy, and it's mid-season, so he might not be, but it's a quarterback. Yeah, it's going to be that whole like training camp competition. It just gets to that thing where the rookie then loses a whole year behind the starter, like Patrick Mahomes did behind Alex Smith that year. It's just like It's just annoying. It's just better to get rid of that guy and just let him play. Like they should have got rid of Jimmy G, the Niners, and really given Trey Lance the full year, but they never did. And then by the time he came back, he was hurt. And then it's like, the Giants, I'm out on Danny Dimes. I'm not out on him completely. Like, I think he's like a solid backup to has some potential, but not enough to pass up the chance to draft someone really good.
Yeah, I told you this is going to be a quarterback-based show. I want to stick with that theme right here. I mean, you have to be impressed with what Joshua Dobbs did, man. I mean, to me, it's, what is he? It's been well documented, 5 teams in the last 6 months. I mean, his superpower, Chris Liss, is that he's able to just kind of look at the playbook, thumb through it, and get enough understanding. Let's go back a little bit. They put him in a playoff game last year, the Titans, right? Held his own there, right? Gets traded a day before the season starts to the Arizona Cardinals, starts their top 12 fantasy quarterback. And then on midweek gets traded to the Minnesota Vikings, comes in, and again, all-star performance, especially from fantasy football perspective, but he also gets the win. Josh Dobbs is the answer at quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings for the rest of the year. Are you picking him up even in a single quarterback?
I picked him up in a couple leagues. In the dynasty trade where I made this huge trade for Jonathan Taylor because my team's out of contention, I had him throw me back Dobbs, and I have him in that league. Although I have Mahomes, but Mahomes on bye this week. But yeah, why not? And if Jefferson comes back next week, he's not coming back this week with Addison and Jefferson, and then the running that Dobbs does.
Hawkinson,
he could be a top 5 quarterback the rest of the way. I mean, he easily could. And so in a 1 QB league, that's all that matters, right? 2 QB league, just anyone with the pulse matters. But a 1 QB league, you don't really care, if some pocket passer takes over for some other guy. But you get the running quarterback in an offense that there's in shootouts and it's indoors and it's, got weapons. I mean, yeah, of course I'm interested.
All right. And do you think that what do you handicap the odds that he is taking the first snap of the 2024 season for the Vikings, given the nature of the injury to Kirk Cousins, who had an Achilles? We won't see him till at least, October minimum.
Is that true? Because Rodgers is saying he's going to come back in a couple weeks now.
He doesn't take ayahuasca, Kirk Cousins.
Well, he was also doing his own medical treatments for a certain virus.
I'm gonna default to,
and I bet he's going to talk to Rodgers. He's going to talk to Rodgers.
They've already been talking. It's been documented.
Of course,
Yes.
So, sometimes the Western medical system doesn't know everything, and there are other ways to go about things that are maybe not as profitable that might be effective in different ways. And there's a lot of groupthink in medicine. And in fact, we can go a whole rabbit hole in this, which I'm not going to, but things like statins for cholesterol. I mean, there's a lot of dissent that has been shut down over a lot of medical topics because the amount of money that's, when you patent, when you have statins, if you're a statin provider, it's the most prescribed drug of all. I mean, there's multi-billions of dollars. So if you're a doctor and you say, I don't know how effective this is, maybe there's other ways to treat this, or this isn't really, cholesterol is not the problem it's made out to be. It's not just like, how funny that guy disagrees. It's like, we need to destroy this guy and drum him out of the entire business.
Mina Kimes rant on Aaron Rodgers. I get sick when I see it.
Oh, that Mina Kimes rant where she's like getting so indignant and histrionic over his medical choices, how selfish he is. Yeah. But I'm sure she apologized to him because any decent person would, right?
No,
of course she did. She had to have apologized, right? She was destroying his character on a large platform, and it turned out he was totally right, and she didn't apologize. No, she must have.
So I want to stick with this whole medical thing because I have some questions for you. I think we wrapped up fantasy football. Do you have any other thoughts for Week 10?
Well, I was going to just tell you. I was going to just discuss my epiphany that I wrote about yesterday
on realmansports.com.
Yeah, Real Man Sports. But we can talk about whatever you want. I don't care.
Well, no, talk about your epiphany first because mine had to do with getting when they.
So I had a disastrous week in Week 5. I just made these bad lineup choices, and I compounded it, making it worse. And I was like looking at like fantasy pros. I was looking at Erickson's value meter. Erickson's value meter is better, but it didn't really matter. So it doesn't matter. It's nothing against anyone personally. And I was
just outsourcing your own
I'd be like stuck, right? I'd be stuck. Like obviously there's obvious calls, right? Like somebody, who to start here, but then there's like a lot of calls. Everybody has them that are between 40 and 60%. They're tight, and it can go either way. And that it can go either way. But it can ruin your season, right? Because even though it's 50-50, one guy can get 3 touchdowns. The other guy can get shut out. I mean, just because it was 50-50 before the game doesn't mean it's close after the game. So these are really important calls. And I would just kind of be lazy and be like, okay, how does Erickson have him ranked? How does Fantasy Pros have it ranked? How does, I might even look up a stat, like what the defense they face. This is the 22nd defense. This is the 14th defense against quarterbacks. And I would be like, all right, I'll go with this guy. And it was disastrous. And I just realized, like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I've watched football for 45 years. I have a huge amount of experience and knowledge about this sport. And I am going to absorb the facts that I can, but it's not like one fact, like, oh, this defense is 22nd against quarterbacks. This defense is 14th. That can't carry the weight. Okay, I'm going to switch it. That's like such a tiny detail. It's like, the difference in points allowed might be like 2 points a week, and they have different schedules. It's just ridiculous to hang your hat on that. But you want to hang your hat on something, on somebody's rankings, on the market. But, well, the market says this. The Fantasy Pros rankers like this guy, so I'll go with this guy. It's 50-50.
And by the way, some of the Fantasy Pros rankers take it seriously. Some of them just kind of just mail it in. So now you're getting, so part of that soup, part of that stew you're getting is apathy.
It's also a group thing. People listen to the same podcast. They follow the same beat writers. I mean, they're all, it's ridiculous to rely on something like that. Unless you absolutely knew nothing. Like if you knew nothing, if you just didn't know about football, yeah, rely on that completely, or rely on Jeff's, because you don't know anything. So you don't want to make a gigantic obvious mistake. But if someone like me is having trouble, someone like you is having trouble with a decision, there's nobody who knows, right? If it's close for us, nobody in the world knows. It's close enough that we know enough about this that it could go either way. And so what you need to do is trust your judgment. I say this all the time. I complain about, but I swear to God, my biggest regret in my career, whatever you want to call it, my time doing fantasy sports, I still do it. Is the last 12 years I've been a worse player than the first 12 years in every sport, basically, and a worse better. And I'm just getting out from under it. Because I fell for the pitch, these midwit pitch of oh, this metric, this system, this, whether it was Massey Peabody or Net YPA or some other jargon that was oh, if I'm not sure, let's look at this metric and use that, right? That was it's so appealing because you're often not sure. It's hard to know even what you think, right? What you really think on a tough call. And so I got caught up in that rather than trusting my good instincts. I have good instincts and I observe this game. I'm not some novice. I've been watching this for 45 years, doing fantasy for 25. I know nobody knows better than me, in my opinion. Nobody in the world. Now, I'm not the best player because I've betrayed my instincts a million times, where other people are much more based, and they're just no, this is what I'm going with. And but in the world, you too, you're the same. We're all the same. A lot of us, right? We've done it for years. Even if you've done it for 10 years closely, you've got it. You've got all the built-in knowledge. No one's better than you. Nobody knows more than you. You just got to get in touch with your knowledge base and be like, what do I really think about this? And it's a hard question. Sometimes I'm I don't know. Right. Last week, I was going to bet the Giants in Vegas. Right. And I was like, you know what? The Giants are better. They got Dimes back. They got Barkley back. They got Andrew Thomas. Raiders suck. But I was like, yeah, but it's a late game travel after the Giants had a heartbreaking loss to the Jets, and the Raiders got the dead cat bounce of firing the quarterback there.
And the Raiders also, you know who their coach was? I mean, that's our guy,
ex-Giant. Yeah. Ex-Giant,
right. I mean, a key, he's inner circle Hall of Fame in the 2000s. In the 2000s.
He was a solid linebacker who made one fumble.
But he was go ahead.
He was a good guy, but he was, he wasn't that good. But the point is, it was just I was I can't touch this game. I just looked inside and I was I wanted to think it, but I just realized, no, there was a stay away. And same with the Jets. I wanted to take the Jets, but then I was just I don't respect the Chargers, but I just looked at it a little bit more and I was no, I'm out. And these are the things you have to pay attention to. And now I just don't want to look at anything. I want to look at information, but I don't want to use the information as my excuse for making a decision. No. The decision is yours. And none of these models that these people have are going to help you. If you are an experienced fantasy football player and you have a 50-50 call that you're having trouble making, nobody else in the world has the answer. The model doesn't have the answer. Every game against the spread, by the way, 50-50, right? In terms of the average amount that it covers. So nobody has an answer for you. There's no tout. There's nobody's going to tell you. You've got to make the call, and you'll get better. And you get better at making the call. You get better at figuring out what it is you really believe. And sometimes you can't come to a conclusion. You're I don't know. I'm staying away from this. And sometimes it's really hard. You're almost guessing. But since week 5, I have not looked at anybody's anything. And sometimes I do get off my ass, do a little more research. But even when I do the research, I don't hang it on this stat that I find. I'm just simply incorporating the stat, incorporating the information and think, what do I want to do here? What's my pick? What is my choice? And try to just get in touch. What do I want to do? And make the call. And when I get it wrong, which has been a lot less the last 5 weeks, I say, okay, I got it wrong. Good to know. And I don't lose sleep over it because it's my decision. I didn't outsource it to some midwit bullshit,
I like to call
bullshit
them fantasy
aggregate.
midwits. Fantasy midwits.
You know, because as you said, half the people are mailing it in and it's all groupthink. I mean, just make your own calls. I promise you, if you can do it for real and really pay attention to yourself and do it, in a year, you will be like, holy shit, I can't believe how much better I am at this.
Yeah, and when I saw you wrote about that on Real Man Sports too, I actually, I read through it. I read it again, and I highlighted. I even made a comment on the article. I think that it also applies to a lot of decisions in your life. I told you I referee high school basketball, and part of that is that you have to take this referee test, and this year it happens to be much harder. And I just took the test. I went over it. I did my research, and I submitted my test. Everyone else is agonizing for weeks and going back and forth and asking other people their interpretation of this rule, and I passed. I'm in the area where I can do, the higher levels of basketball. Other people are failing tests because they're all group thinking each other. So I used what you said, applied it to that area of my life. And I think that it also spreads to other areas. Just be decisive, do your own research. You could check with experts when you're unsure or totally unfamiliar. But for the most part, if you've been doing something, you've made observations, you just make the damn decision.
There's so much in life. You get told, oh, the experts, you need to consult experts. Who are you to decide? Let me tell you something. You will get so much farther in life just giving it your best, using your best judgment. Do the best you can. You don't know everything. You're going to make mistakes, but just do the best you can in as many things as you can. And it's just so much better than just always worrying like, oh, I don't know. How is this really supposed to be? Just give it your best shot. And for this is your hobby. This is your fun. How sad is it? And even me, I've done this and I'm doing this like outsourcing. Like what a total nutless monkey I was being like, oh, I don't know. I'm going to outsource. Like that's ridiculous. Right. But this is also like, this is your hobby. This is fun. Why are you outsourcing? This isn't like you're deciding, what kind of cancer treatment to get. It's your fantasy football league.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Chris Liss, you did it again. They could follow you over on Noster. Just look up Chris Liss. And
just go to realmansports.com. All the links are to my other stuff.
I'm mentioning Noster to try to promote it on other platforms.
Good. Good. I like that.
Generally, it's not necessarily.
Well, you got to sign up for Noster, Alan.
You know what? I will do it. I'm talking the talk. I should walk the walk. And you've made it.
It's the future. It's definitely the future. It's not just going to be social media. It's going to be everything. Like, how you got to log into a website and like remember 80 different passwords and all this shit. You're just going to have your stuff and it's going to be interoperable with everything on the web, but it's your sort of base that has your sort of login, your private key, and it's going to change everything.
Yep. All right. So one time we will do a standalone podcast on the state of social media. I'll make my arguments. We've talked about it on this podcast as well, but I think a good 20, 30-minute discussion on that with me voicing the objections and concerns of just normal person who's not familiar with that protocol, I think would be a valuable piece of content for anyone that has my same concerns, but we'll do that another time. Chris Liss, who are you picking in Week 10 Survivor for everyone that just tuned in?
I think as of right now, which I may change, is Seattle. But I wrote it up as Seattle, and I'll, if I change it, I'll note that in the Survivor column.
All right, everybody, you follow him as I do when he's on Twitter on Tuesdays at Chris_Liss. You go over to Real Man Sports to get all of Chris Liss's content. The Chris Liss podcast talks more about social issues and politics. One of my favorites. Are you doing one this week?
I just recorded it. I got to edit it. I got to see if it's fit for publication, but I think so.
Real Man doesn't edit. Real Man just.
I know, but it would be better. I don't edit these. I just throw these up. But that one, I always have to edit. It's got too much crazy, especially when you're just doing it yourself for an hour.
Fair enough. Follow me at Alan Seslowsky, and also right now, RotoWire is giving away 2 free days behind our paywall. Just go to rotowire.com. /try, rotowire.com/try. Put in your email, paywall unlocks. Not only do we have the rest of season fantasy football stuff, if you love fantasy basketball, we have fantasy tennis, fantasy golf, everything. Just go behind there for free. Check out the paywall for a couple days. A lot of great stuff on there. A lot of great premium articles. All right, everybody, we'll be back next Thursday, same time, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time with a live stream, or you can catch it on the replay anytime. Good luck.